everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Abby Lyall. I work for a fund called Big Idea Ventures. We're a venture capital fund that invests in the future of food. So we invest in plant-based, cell-based, and alternative protein companies from across the globe. And the end goal of our fund is to reduce the impact of animal agriculture for human health, climate change, and animal welfare reasons. So a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Canton, Ohio. I moved to New York when I was 18 and have lived there ever since. I went to NYU. I studied finance and computer science when I was there. Thought that I wanted to do something in more conventional finance, like investment banking. That was what all the cool kids were doing at the time. I actually ended up falling into starting a company while I was in college. And it was almost on complete accident. A friend and I were looking for opportunities to pad our resumes for investment banking interviews, and we entered a case competition where we had to pitch a business idea, and we ended up winning $20,000 that we had to use to launch the business. Completely unexpected. Entrepreneurship was not something, startups weren't something I'd ever thought I would do. And we ended up running that business for 2 years, failed miserably at it. We had no idea what we were doing, but really learned so much from that, met so many great people. And by the time we wrapped up, I'd realized that was what I wanted to do, and that building a career in the entrepreneurship space was what I wanted to do. And that, conventional corporate life wasn't really for me. So that led me to my first job out of undergrad, which was, the second employee at a accelerator program called Quake Capital. Industry agnostic. So there I worked with over 100 companies from across the globe. I helped build their accelerator program from scratch, built out a bunch of university programs, and ran 5 accelerator programs for them in New York. And then towards the middle of 2019, last year, I was looking to do something a little bit more mission driven, looking to do something a bit different. And a really similar opportunity presented itself with the Big Idea Ventures team. A friend that I'd known for a while, offered me the position to come on board once again as a very early employee and build an accelerator program from the ground up. So I did that, worked with a ton of really interesting and passionate mission-driven companies in plant-based food, got to dive into my passions for health and fighting global climate change and helping animals. And now we're nearing the end of the second accelerator program at BIV, and I'm actually in the process of transitioning into a really new and exciting role where I'm going to be working on some later stage deals across the entire food value chain, which I'm really excited about. So in 2 weeks, you can talk to me and you can hear a completely different story and a completely different bio. So it's really exciting times. So that's a little bit about me and my background and how I got to where I am today.
That's so amazing. I mean, I can totally relate, your journey. When I was studying computer science, even I didn't know whether I want to get into a conventional job or should I just go, start my own startup. So yeah, I mean, I can pretty much relate to, what has been your journey, and, great job actually. During this journey, have you faced any obstacles? You want to talk about the difficulties and the times, the difficult times you have faced throughout this journey?
Absolutely. So I think uncertainty is a really tough one for particularly students and young people that want to pursue unconventional career paths. I think that doubt and that uncertainty can be a really powerful obstacle because when you're graduating from college, you're just you just want to pay the bills, right? You don't want to live in your parents' basement. You want to be on your own. You want to be, able to support yourself. And I would say that was the number one priority for me coming out of college, and the number one thing that I was focused on. I didn't want to be a burden on my parents any longer. I wanted to be able to support myself. And I think that is a huge block. I think that causes a lot of people to at least initially pursue career paths that they're not necessarily passionate about and not necessarily very engaged in. And I think that I got incredibly lucky in it, and I'm very grateful for having had that opportunity at Quake presented to me, and then once again having had that opportunity at BIB presented to me, because I think without them, you know, that uncertainty and that doubt would have led me into a path that maybe I was less passionate about or less interested in. So I definitely think that you know, lack of structured recruiting cycles, right? Like, you can get an investment banking job almost a year and a half in advance now. If you want to hold out to work for a startup, you have to bypass all of that. You have to reject all those jobs. You have to reject all those offers. You know, that could involve, depending on who your family is, that could involve a certain amount of parental pressure. It could involve financial pressure, particularly if you have a lot of student debt. So I think that that's one of the biggest obstacles that I face and that I've seen people face is that uncertainty. And that's something that I would like to see more of in our industry, is more accessibility for people who might not come from the same sort of privileged backgrounds that I've had or that some of my classmates have had, to be able to still pursue those career paths and not be forced into something that they're less passionate about just because of that doubt and that fear of uncertainty.
Interesting, very interesting. So while working at this accelerator, have you faced the startups like who are struggling to get any funding from such venture firms, or if they are able to present their idea well, if they are they can show their revenue model? So what kind of obstacles a new startup face when they approach a venture firm?
Yeah, absolutely. So helping startups raise money is one of the main focuses of both accelerator programs that I've run, but particularly now in my current role at BIV. And I definitely think the biggest advice that I would give a startup or founder in that situation, obviously it's tough. There's going to be tons of obstacles. Regardless of how good your company is and how interesting your company is, you're going to get 100 no's before you get a yes. That's everybody. You ask any founder who's ever fundraised successfully, every founder I've ever worked with who's ever fundraised successfully, and that's the story. You know, you get 100 no's before you get a yes. So the biggest advice that I would give, startups looking to raise money is just be human and build real, genuine human connections and relationships. That's the type of founders that investors want to invest in. There's a million fantastic business ideas out there. Obviously, you need to have a strong business. You need to have traction. You need to have a compelling value proposition, but that's not enough. Investing, and particularly VC investing at the very early stages, like the type of investing I do, is purely a relationships-driven game. So showing up to the meeting, showing up to the interview, being human, connecting with the person on a human level. Don't act all stiff because they're an investor. No, just because they're an investor, it doesn't mean they're better than you. You're probably more intelligent than them 90% of the time. So go in there, act like you're a person, and they're a person. Build that real human connection. And those are the types of founders that investors want to fund, and that they'll trust to, be good stewards of their capital.
Okay, great, interesting. So, since you have been giving us some advices for the startup, so we are just, curious that what is one piece of advice you would like to give to our female budding engineers or the businesswoman or anyone who wants to start their new company, or to invest in some company, or just to follow their dreams?
Sure. I guess advice I would have given my younger self. This might sound counterintuitive, but hear me out. Don't take things too seriously. That is the number one piece of advice that I would give my younger self. I feel like I look at myself when I was younger and just starting out. And I look at other people that I see, smart, talented young women just starting out, and I see them, being so anxious about every single little thing, like every single detail matters and everything is personal. And that's just such a toxic way to live your life. And it's not going to leave you feeling happy and fulfilled in the long run. And it's not going to make people like you, and it's not going to open doors for you. So the biggest advice that I would give is, don't take things too seriously. Learn how to say no to things. If you don't want to do it, say no to it, right? You don't have to do it just because someone asked. If you don't want to do it, say no. And do things you actually like. Do things you actually enjoy. And don't feel obligated to do something just because someone asked, and don't feel like you have to do something just because that's what everybody else is doing. And if you do that, you'll be in for a happy and successful life on your own terms, regardless of the title on your LinkedIn or the number that's in your bank account.
Interesting. And I totally agree with your, this advice that you shouldn't take life too seriously, and you should take your chances and see like where your life leads you, and where exactly, how you can actually gel with people and take, I would say, how you can board a new rocket ship and just, fly and learn as you go. So
Totally.
that's true. That's true. So, I mean, I would love to know, like, what are your hobbies and who is your role model?
Interesting. So hobbies, I have a ton of hobbies. I'm really passionate about mindfulness and all things associated with that. So mindfulness and mental health. So I do a lot of yoga, meditation, breath work, those types of things. I love music. I've been playing piano since I was 3. I love recording music and creating new, interesting sounds. Going to concerts back when they were concerts, that was very fun. And just, going on random adventures. I love, hanging out with people, exploring different places, exploring Brooklyn, where I live, exploring New York, and just, traveling and exploring different places and having those random adventures.
Great.
Yeah. And reading, I would count reading as a hobby too, particularly long form journalism. I really enjoy reading different articles and seeing a different person's perspective and being able to dig deep into an issue that maybe I've previously known nothing about. That's something that's really fascinating and interesting for me.
Great.
So.
Awesome. Yeah. And who's your role model?
So I actually don't really like the concept of role models. I've never really had one. I wouldn't say I have one currently. I actually think the idea of having one role model that you really look up to can be toxic because, everybody's a human and everyone has faults. And that doesn't mean that I don't learn things from other people, because I absolutely do. I think instead of having one role model or 2 role models that I really look up to, I really try to approach every interaction with every person that I meet as a learning experience and see what unique thing I can take away from that person and that interaction. Because I think everybody, no matter their background or their age or whatnot, has so much that they can teach you. So that's sort of my personal approach to the whole role model thing.
That's awesome, actually. And so the last question, what is one thing you really want to change in this world, and why?
Interesting. I really think that we need a drastic shift of consciousness in the way that we societally think about happiness and fulfillment. And what I mean by that is I feel like we live in a world where we have so much technology. We've built so much amazing and incredible technology for ourselves, and that's wonderful. I'm very pro technology. I think it's fantastic. But yet the most successful people I know work 80 to 100 hours a week. And I feel like the more we move forward in technological development, the whole idea behind technological development is that we should be able to work less, and we should be able to have more time, to spend on things that are, making us feel fulfilled and things that we actually enjoy. And I actually see that becoming the opposite, the further and further we move into the future. So something that I would really like to impact in my life is making that shift of consciousness away from this is what's important because it's busy and it feels important and it makes me feel successful and it's prestigious or whatever. And instead moving into, what makes people feel personally happy and personally fulfilled, and kind of going back to our roots and sort of how we were before we got caught up in society and being made to feel that things we didn't really think were important were important.
That's true. Like, getting all these gadgets in our lives and, just getting us occupied for no reason and, not saving ourselves for the family time. It's just it has become so claustrophobic, actually.
Totally. And I'm so not anti-technology. I'm actually very pro-technology, right? Like I think technology is wonderful, but we need to use it as a tool, not let it use us, right?
Yes.
We should be using it as a tool to make our lives better, not be a slave to it, not be addicted to it. And I think, in my opinion, that requires a radical rethink of the human consciousness on a societal level. And so I'd like to be part of the movement that brings that to the forefront and moves that forward.
That's true. That's true. I recently watched this Netflix show, The Social Dilemma, and they just talk about, how technology is actually using us rather than we using the technology.
Totally. If you're not paying, you're the product.
You're the product, yeah. That's the line. That's the line they have used. So I totally agree with you. So
well, great. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Abby. You have a great, great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.